Welcome everyone to another CTC software webinar. My name is Chris Bircher, Director of Technical Services here at CTC, and today we are going to take a look at how to take your families or families in a project that were downloaded from a third party or provided from a third party download content pack, what have you, and how to update them so that you can continue to use them on multiple/future projects using Parameter Jammer and Family Processor. Before we get into that, I want to encourage everyone to ask questions using the questions panel. If you are attending the live presentation, I will be monitoring that and will answer them in line as I go along. And be sure to take time at the end to do a recap and answer any remaining questions that are present. If you are watching the recorded version on our YouTube channel, please use the comments section below. We monitor those as well, and we'll make sure to answer those questions when they come in. Okay, so a very common practice on lots of projects is to get the content that you need to do the job, whether it's a specific manufacturer, supplier, or you're looking for a particular style or appearance that your out-of-the-box library doesn't necessarily provide, or your corporate library doesn't provide. It's very common, happens all the time. Now, and as designers, we do that all the time. We love it. As BIM managers, we're not always that big a fan. And the reason for that is because it'll mess up our schedules. And now we have patches and fixes that we need to put in place to get schedules to function the way that they're supposed to function. So today's webinar is going to show you how we can take a product from the project suite and manager suite in Parameter Jammer and Family Processor, respectively, and how to update those families to work in your projects and in your schedules for not only the current project, but for all projects, or for any projects that would need those families, and allow you to remove the patches that you would have put in place previously. So for today, I got an example we're going to walk through. So we'll give you a quick overview of what Parameter Jammer and Family Processor are, just to make sure you're familiar with them in case you're not already. And then we'll show you how Parameter Jammer works to get parameters into the families, and then how you can use Family Processor to finish the job. So in this example, it can be a two-part process. And then for Family Processor, I'll show you how to save those settings out so you can use them again in the future in case similar items come into play, which they just might. So real quick, come on, there we go. Parameter Jammer. It's from the BIM project suite, and it's gonna be right in the middle of the ribbon, and you'll see that in a moment. And this app is specifically made to take shared parameters found in your schedule and replace parameters in the family if there's something that matches, like with the same name. Think maybe voltage, for example, on the electrical side in MEP. The out-of-the-box one is text-based property. The one that you may get from a lot of manufacturers is not. So that's something that could map itself and replace if found like that. But it can also allow you to forcefully add a parameter, or change the mapping if you're not happy with how our tool mapped it, or just not bring it in at all, right? Maybe you don't care to have a particular parameter in that family because maybe it's going to show up in a different schedule or what have you. So there's you have some options there. Family Processor does a little bit more. So it is intended to help you batch update a bunch of families that need similar settings. So it'll allow you to add, modify, or remove existing family and or shared parameters in the family itself. It'll also allow you to modify materials and remove materials, purge out all the defaults if you're no longer needing those default materials. And then it can, create type catalogs based off the types that are currently nested into the families themselves. And then you can delete the types if you don't need them anymore. And there's a whole lot going on here that you can't just do. Well, that you could do in batch across multiple families that would take forever and a weekend to do by hand and on your own. So, but it's best that we just kind of jump right into it. So that's what we're going to do. Now, so here's the issue. So I've got my project open, and one thing I'm going to do is show you this. So in a floor plan, you're designing, you're drawing, you're doing whatever. And this can be architecture, structure, interiors, mechanical, electrical, plumbing. It doesn't matter the discipline. And it comes time for you to insert some content, and maybe some of the doors that you're placing are great, but maybe you need a new panel or a different frame or a double door that does a thing, or a different type of VAV box from a different manufacturer. Maybe it's the whole series of content is coming from a different supplier. All your doors need to be something else, and or you're new to the game and you don't have a good content library set up yet, or a robust content library. That's okay. It happens. And that's where this little video will come into play. So here I've got a door family that does not match the other ones that I'm using in my project, right? This was I needed this unique panel in this situation. So I downloaded a family that had what I needed. And if I go to my schedule now, we'll go to level 2 schedule in this case. For the most part, everything's working out as it should. But there's a couple of instances here where fields aren't populating as they should, and that's because the parameter itself isn't in that family. And if I click the highlight and model option and click close, that's the door we were just looking at, right? That's my new custom, door that I downloaded. So we need to update this. So step 1 is to use Parameter Jammer to get the parameters used in the schedule to be now available in the family, right? And I guess before I show you that, the traditional way to do that, there's 2 ways. First way is to edit the family, add the shared parameters to the family, and load it back in. But if you've got a bunch of those, like in this case, I've got a few, that could take more time than you're willing to spend on it. The other option is probably the most common option, and that is to add project parameters. Add your shared parameter to the project, tell it to apply to all categories of that type, and away we go, right? Then that happens a lot. But if you're constantly downloading families and piecing things together on some projects or all projects, that project parameter list can get really long and it can get confusing. And honestly, it's not ideal. Yes, it works, but it's not ideal. It would be best if the content that you were constantly using and reusing just has everything in it and functions the way it's supposed to function. So first step, let's fix the schedule, okay? Parameter Jammer will help us fix the schedule. So my door up top here is the one that I showed in the floor plan. So I'm gonna grab my schedule, and well, the first thing I should do is map my shared parameter file or ensure that it's already mapped. In this case, it is. The next step is to grab the schedule that I'm looking at, the one in question, and then grab the family or families that need the update, that need these parameters added to it. And so that's what I'm going to do right now. And I know it's this 6-panel door. I'm pretty sure the other ones are the bifold down here. So I'm going to grab that one as well and hit next. And if they were all not your corporate standard door family or family, grab them all, and that's okay. What it'll do is it's going to scan everything, check it against the shared parameter file and the schedule that's being used, and it's going to give you a list of everything that's found. And if it can map it based off the name of the parameter in the schedule versus the name of the parameter in the family, it's going to try to do an auto map, which will effectively take the shared parameter, inject it into the family, and replace what was there with the shared parameter. So in this case, because the door that I used already had frame material and it appears panel material already, it did it, but it didn't have anything else. So if I want, I can grab panel finish and decide how I want it added, right? I can add it as an instance property. I can add it as a type property. I can manually swap it with another parameter found in the family, or not include it at all. I can omit it from the process so that I'm not overloading the family with stuff that isn't necessarily needed for this process. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the finish properties and add them as instance parameters here, which they're done. And then there's some built-ins that it's reporting, and the reason why it's reporting some of those is because they're in the schedule, right? So it's just reporting everything it finds, whether it's just in the schedule, basically. There's this other appears in schedule parameter. I kind of like it to be there because then I can filter things out. And so I'm going to add it as a type property. And then fire rating is there, we're good. And the rest I'm happy with. So then I can minimize this and move on to the next family, just so it's a little easier to navigate. We'll do the same thing. I'm going to add it as a type. Finish as instance, material, finish. This one didn't map, so I'm going to map it to, or as it might already actually be done. But we will add, I'm just going to let it as a type. And at the end, if you knew you needed a bunch of stuff, like maybe 90% of these should have been automatically added as, say, type properties. What we could do is I could go through this list, find everything that needs to be an instance property, set it to be instance, and then set everything else to type. And then hit the set button. And that will forcefully change everything from either what it thought it should be or do not include to be add as type, unless you touched it yourself. Everything else would then auto set itself. In my case, I'm good with what it is. The rest are built-ins. I'm not touching anything else. So I'm just going to go ahead and hit next and let it cook. So this is the one up here that I'm most concerned about because that's the family we were looking at from the floor plan. Hopefully I grabbed the right bifold and those two should update as well. So if I go ahead and hit finish, so it tells me it updated, it's resolved. And if I go here and grab this, so I got my finished properties here. They're empty, right? Nothing's there. If I go back to the schedule, it should have refreshed by now. There we go. Sometimes Revit, for whatever reason, doesn't refresh for me all the time really quickly, but here it is. So it auto mapped the panel material and the frame material in this case and gave me what was already defined in the family, which is fantastic. One less step for me to worry about. Finished properties didn't exist, but now that these are editable parameters, I can go ahead and type something in, right? As long as that material exists in my library, I can enter that information in. Control, well, come on, Control A, well, okay, fine. Or you can click the browse icon and do it that way. All right, we'll just do that, call it a day. All right, now, and there's one thing about this process that I want to point out is that in the project parameters list, panel finish and frame finish don't exist, or appear in schedule. They're not in this list. So our tool is not just adding project parameters and adding it to the schedule. That's not what we're doing. We're actually, because they were already in the project that came with the other families, we are actually basically editing the family and adding the parameter to the family, right? It's, and in some cases, doing the swap. So you don't have to worry about anything extra coming along for the ride. Okay, now, step 2. I know I'm going to use these again on future projects, right? Maybe I love that 6-panel or the 6-panel styled door piece that I brought in. The bifolds are another unique style. I want to keep those. Or maybe on the MEP side, maybe you're constantly using Johnson Controls for a lot of stuff, and but it doesn't match your current setup on your schedules. If you want to go ahead and standardize that for your firm, you're going to want to do this next step, because this right here is for this project. The other project down the way, I would have to do the same thing again. So you might find yourself doing this on a fairly regular basis, and that's fine, right? It works, it does what you need it to, but there's a little bit more that we can do. So I'm going to go find this family real quick, and I'm going to edit it. We'll just do this. I'm going to edit the family and get into the family environment here and open up family processor. So again, just to show you, we, via Parameter Jammer, we forcefully added these families, and we remapped frame material to the door, so that now frame material from before is the new frame material from my project and shared parameter file. Okay, but I want this to be smart, right? And I may need to add or replace a couple of other things. So maybe there's additional parameters that we need to add that help with functionality that aren't necessarily in, say, the schedule. And even if they are in the schedule, right, we just turned it all into a text-based property. If I want anything to be more intuitive, and maybe replacing thickness here with thickness in my shared parameter file, now's the time to do it. Okay, so that's where Family Processor comes in. So if I open up Family Processor, we can do a multitude of things with this to standardize your whatever content this is. Okay, so this tool does a lot of stuff. For right now, most of what we're doing today is going to be focused here on the parameters tab, but it will allow you to do top level family processing if you want things to, set omni class values, or for whatever reason you got to change the family category, or you need to add calculate room calc points or make it a shared component. That's all here. There's auditing down here. If you want to audit the content during the process, you can do that. So I am going to check that box because I'm a big fan of doing that. There's also things for updating and replacing lookup tables, changing materials, removing the defaults if you don't want them, which is actually in options up here. But change parameters is where we're going to focus our efforts today. Now, if there are additional parameters that need to be in this family for functionality, for scheduling, what have you, I can do that right now with Family Processor. Or maybe in the Parameter Jammer process, the mapping didn't happen because the names were different. Or maybe you needed it to map to something that didn't exist in the schedule and the list there because it wasn't in the schedule. Number of different reasons for needing to take this extra step. We can do that right now. So I can map my shared parameter file and come to the Add Shared Parameters tab. This is presenting a list of everything in my parameter file. So if there was anything that I needed for the panel, let's say, it's going to start to list a bunch of different parameters used for panels. There's, panel width, there are heights, the list goes on. Here's the finished property again. There's panel glazing material. which would be important on other families potentially, and panel width. If I want to update this to actually use the parameters that are in my families so that it's consistent, maybe I change out panel width, and that actually will happen in a different place. So I'm going to actually remove that before I get ahead of myself. Oh, I didn't mean to remove them all. Let's type that in again. Panel, glazing, material. I want that. I'm going to actually switch over to frame and do the same thing, grab a couple of frame materials. And then there's some other ones that I want to add. So I'm going to bring those in. There is my threshold properties. So I've got a yes, no parameter. These are both material parameters, and that's okay. You want them as instance or type-based properties. For threshold, by default, everything's coming in as a type. And I can grab height and thickness, and there's offset properties, various other pieces that go along with it. And maybe I'll make that an instance as well. And whatever the case may be, you can go ahead and start finding it. Now, maybe you're not sure exactly what your families are using, right? And now that I'm in the middle of using Family Processor, I don't want to close it, go open another family, reference parameter names and formulas, copy paste them, take screenshots. You don't have to do any of that. We can actually source parameters from the family itself. So I can go ahead and say select from family file right here. So if I jump to, I actually slow down, add family parameters, select from family file, and go find one. So if I browse to my other door folder here that I got, right down here, there they are. I'm in 24 today, and we'll pick my main assemblies folder. And it's scanning the content right now. It's going to give me a list of all the families in that folder. And in this case, I'll just grab this one for right now, hit OK. And it's going to start listing out the parameters found in that family. And at this point, I can start looking at this and saying, okay, this is what's in my family. What do I need? Here's my glazing material parameter. I got that. Here's material from before. We got that. But maybe I want to make sure that we're using the same, height, width parameters. And you can add those in. Maybe I want to start incorporating some of the panel inset offsets, the panel type property. Now, when it comes to adding or loading panel, family type parameters, before you do this, you need to make sure that the one exists in the family first. If it doesn't, it's not going to work. It'll error on you, and it's not a pretty sight. So make sure that you have first nested the proper family type in before you try to add it to the families. It's not going to work otherwise. And so I'm not going to add it because I don't have one nested in right now. But I want to add a couple that have formulas in here. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And we're going to add some control swing options to do my existing swing. So I'm going to add some of that stuff in. If a parameter, so what it's going to do is extract the parameter and its definition and its properties from the family that I had and add them to this list here. So if the parameters themselves were set up to be instance properties or type properties, that comes in accordingly. It brings the parameter type as it should. If it had default values set, it's going to set those. If formulas are being used, it's going to bring those in as well. However, in that formula, if parameters are being used in the formula that are not added to this list, those formulas aren't going to work, right? So we need to make sure that we're not missing anything. So before we move on to the next set of steps, I need to make sure that I've just added all of the appropriate parameters. So we got angle, I've got control angle, I've got, I did not get show 3D angle. So I have to go back and add that again. Okay, thankfully it remembered everything that I did. So I can just go back and grab it real quick. down here near the bottom. Oh, no, there it is. I passed right over it. Okay, so now we have it. So that's good. And existing is there. We're all set. Okay. The last bit to this, and so you can, again, if it's a family parameter, if it's a shared parameter, it's available in this list through this button. I also have the ability to replace, right? So if my mapping didn't work, for example, like with frame material, I can add this to the list here and then specify the shared parameter name from my shared parameter file to replace with. Okay, same with panel material. You know, it's already done, but I'm going to add it to this list anyway because maybe I want that to update across the board. Now, at this point, I'm done. But I will point this out real quick. There is a parameter to change tab if you wanted to rename something, switch it from a type to an instance or an instance to a type. Then you could also change values, update a formula or redefine the formula, move it to a different parameter group. That's all something you could do right here. If you weren't sure, if the parameter you wanted to modify wasn't in your list or you weren't sure, you know, you were having trouble finding it, but you knew what family it was in, again, you can select from a family file and make the change that way. All right, let's hit it. So on the select, so then there's the processing order. I'm just working with materials in this case, so it doesn't really matter much. You don't have to touch anything here then, but if you in a much more detailed process where you're adding and removing and deleting and rearranging stuff, this might make a difference. These could get moved around if you need to make sure your process goes smoothly. Now, I'm going to do a quick little test and just run it on the current family. So I can set that, and this is a good way to do a quick little preview. You get a log of everything that's about to happen. What's it going to do? It's going to add these parameters. It's going to audit the family too upon opening, right? So since it's already open, it's not going to do it. But if I batch process these, it will. Then it's going to add these shared parameters. It's going to add these family parameters. It's also going to replace these too. So I'm going to hit continue. It's going to run through it, scan it out real quick, and it's going to give me a report of what was successful or not successful. And based on what I have added, I may have some good things, I may have some bad things, right? So for the most part, everything worked out really well. Here, though, it's telling me it had a problem setting the formula. And likely that's because it'll tell you that there's an issue with some of those. Oops, I didn't mean to stretch that part, but the common errors way down here at the end are the symbols are still, unsupported symbols in the names, instance parameters being used in a parameter for a type parameter, in a formula for a type parameter, the basics. Or I'm trying to do something before it's ready to do, which is also entirely possible. So all that means that we need to do is make sure that everything in these formulas happens first, right? So I'm adding control angle 3D. Well, show angle 3D hasn't been added yet, right? That's the last thing in the list. So what I need to do here is move it up so that it comes in first. Makes sense, right? Same thing with existing. That's got to happen first. So we'll bump that up a little bit. And really the smart move is just to take the two formula ones, bump them down to the bottom, and anything that has a formula in it should just be at the bottom of your list. And then it's a matter of reviewing the parameters with formulas to make sure that they're not stepping on each other's toes, right? So in this case, I should be good now. We'll go back, we'll hit it again. Again, it was just a preview. I didn't close the app. So we should get 100%. Oh, now it all failed. Well, no, it didn't, because it did actually try to apply it all already. So these parameters already existed, but it was able to do the formulas now. So that's okay. Now, keep in mind, if you do this, the next step here that we're going to do is we're going to apply it to a folder full of content. The thing to remember with when you apply it to multiple families is some of those families may already have changes made that were being picked up here in this file. And that's okay. Sometimes it will error as long as you read the message and it says it already exists. That's a good thing, right? That's not a bad thing. That just means something already happened, which is not a problem. So at this point, I'm gonna go ahead and first, before I close, I'm gonna save my settings because you can do that. So I'm just gonna go ahead and quick save my, we'll do this, PJ Door Family Update. And we'll just save those settings. Okay, and now I'm gonna close it because the family was open and wants to know if I should actually commit those changes or not. I'm happy with these because it actually updated the rest, so I'm gonna hit yes. And then in my family types, I can go check them out, make sure everything's in place. So I brought in the extra materials and finishes that I had requested. I can now set these with default parameters if I want, or leave them alone and let the users define them in the projects. I can come down here and it appears in schedule set. I didn't try to update it. Had I done that, I would have added this in here to lock down that it should always appear in the schedule or not appear in the schedule ever. You know, if I set it to 0 equals 1. And now I've got my angle parameters. I've got my show 3D. This is all good. I'm all happy. If I had a default swing property up in here, which I don't think is, it's all here. So it's on this one. I'm actually going to put it on control, and I could have swapped that. I didn't actually think these were that intuitive, and that's okay. And actually, let's do angle leaf 1, so it'll open back up. And now my existing property will set it to 45 if I have it checked, all the good things. So I'm happy with how I've set it up. And maybe you noticed things didn't get hit, so we can go back into our settings. You know, like maybe you wanted to forcefully push in appears in schedule with a formula set to 0 equals 0 so that it's always on, or 0 equals 1 so that parts of it don't schedule. We can do that right now too. So, but what I want to point out is the next step and the final step to this. Maybe you downloaded a bunch of families from a manufacturer's website, or you purchased a content pack and now you got a bunch of content that you need to get scheduled, right? So example, I've got all these doors. I need all of this stuff that I just got done doing to be in these doors. Okay, check. So now what I can do, instead of just processing the current family, I'm going to process all of them. But before I do that, I'm just going to go ahead and close this one because it might also be saved in that family or in that folder, or should be. And we'll just go ahead and do this. And yep, I'll save it. And we'll put it in the same spot real quick. All right, done. Okay, then I'm going to switch to this empty family. Got to have a family open for family processor to work. And then once it opens, it's actually trying to load up my settings now. So I'll just do a quick review of my settings to make sure that that's what I wanted. Audit, good. Parameters, we're here. They should be all good, all good. Nothing's changing. And now I get to run it. So I'm going to grab my families over here, update that. Oops, select them all, add the selected. And now down here, I have additional properties that I can set up. You can hit preview to make sure you're not getting any erroneous errors on the families that you're going to scan. Not a bad idea if you're not quite sure what your what you're going to come up against. And that's okay. It's good to test it out first to make sure what you're about to do is going to work. And it'll give you a fully qualified report, let you know everything that happened. Sometimes it's also nice to save it to another folder so you don't blow up your process. And quick question that came in. Is it not possible yet for Family Processor to run without a family open? You have to have a family open. It doesn't have to be any of the families that you're scanning, but just a generic sample family. You can hit File, New Family, pick a random category, and there you have it. It just needs to be in the family editor environment because it's only working on families. And I'm happy, so I'm gonna hit go. And while it's going, there's another question from before. So for Parameter Jammer, this question came in just as I started talking about Family Processor. Sometimes Parameter Jammer doesn't work for me. What troubleshooting can be done? I've already checked my parameters file that has the parameters I want. That's a great question. So what I would do is make sure that the schedule you are working with is also using the same parameters from the parameter file that you've mapped, right? So what the tool is doing is it's scanning the schedule for shared parameters found. Then it's also checking that against the shared parameter file that you've mapped in Parameter Jammer. And if they align, there's your report, and that's what you get access to for parameter swapping. If they don't align, you're only going to get the ones that do, or only the built-ins. So that's the first place that I would go to check. If Parameter Jammer is not showing you the parameters from the schedule, then chances are they're not the parameters in your parameter file. And so that's where I would start. And if you need to use a schedule parameter resolver to clean up your schedule to use those parameters without blowing up your formatting, go for it. If you know for a fact that your project is set to use custom parameters, or I guess I shouldn't say custom, but you had created a project specific parameter file because of the project style you're working on the customer, you can quickly export your shared parameters from the project and check it against that. There's a couple of different options for getting that all stitched together. So that's where I would start. Okay, so it's cooking. It's cooking. I'd answer other questions, but nothing's come up just yet. Just about done. And I'll bring this over just so you can see it. Oops, I didn't mean to do that. But as it's going, as it's opening and closing the families, you can see this list kind of starts to fluctuate and update. You get a backup, then it blows away the backup, and it happens so quick that you might not even realize it. But if I sort by the modified times, you can see it's working its way through, and it goes pretty quick. About 30 seconds a pop, I would say, and that can vary, right? But on average, 30 seconds piece is a pretty good average, I suppose. All right, just about done. Just about. But that's the process, and that's how it's going to work out. So my log list here is going to be super long because I did a handful of things on 16 different families. I'll probably have a number of errors in there because the family that I initially updated, I saved it back to this folder. So I didn't have to add it to the list of family files to process. I did, but I didn't have to. So I'm going to have to weed through a few things just to make sure that my report is accurate and did what I expected it to do. All right, now it's just about done. I just want to get to the point where I can show the logs here. And I guess while that's finishing up, let's do this. A couple closing points that I want to point out. If you are interested in learning more about Parameter Jammer and or Family Processor, a great place to start is our website, ctcsoftware.com. Go to our products page for Project or Manager Suite. Scroll down and you will be able to click on the app and find out a little bit more information about it. Maybe get a quick little video that is posted there about the app itself. Alternatively, you can go to our YouTube channel and do a search for Family Processor, Parameter Jammer. You'll have to navigate through some other processory style apps. Or you can simply click the videos button from within each app, which will bring you to a playlist on our YouTube channel of those apps. You can see we did this about 10 years ago, so this is a little bit of a refresher. But they're here. You can get an intro if maybe you're only curious about Parameter Jammer or only curious about Family Processor. Check out the channel. Or there's other apps that you're curious about. Go check them out. There we go. 290 successful tidbits, 14 problems. Let's check those problems real quick. Everything errored in the door that I sampled with. It's exactly what I was hoping to see and expecting to see. Had I not saved it, now I'd be concerned, right? So everything functioned the way I expected it to. Fired off without an issue, without a hitch. So I hope, and this again works with any series of content. It doesn't, I have architecture experience, so I pull the door. I'm familiar with doors, but it doesn't have to be doors. It can be anything that you would need to use and schedule. So any mechanical, electrical, plumbing, fixture, device, equipment, furniture, casework, brace families, connection style families, foundation, structural column families. The list goes on. If it's a savable Revit family, you can use it through this process. So that sums it up for today. I want to thank you all for your time. It's been a pleasure. I hope you saw some value here and are intrigued and want to know more about how that process works. So, and if you do, check out our YouTube channel. If you run into questions or stumbling blocks, reach out to us at info@ctcsoftware.com, and we will be more than happy to assist you. Thank you all for your time. It's been a pleasure, and I look forward to seeing you at the next webinar.